The more we get into photography, the more we're bombarded with people telling us what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing in order to achieve that perfect photograph. And although that can be useful at certain times to help us to hone our photography skills and follow a specific path, other times it can be really detrimental, stopping us from making photographs that we as individual photographers would otherwise have made. In this latest episode of Thinking Photographically, based upon recent personal experiences, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can make personal photographs at the same time as being proud of the pictures that we make. So let's delve into the question: quality or content? The more we're told what makes or breaks a good photograph, the more we look for certain things. And the more that we look for those certain things, the less we look for other things. I'm sure if you're anything like me, you'll have come up with an excuse in the past along the lines of, oh, it's a bit cloudy today, so the light's not going to be right, I'm not going to bother taking my camera out. Or, that scene looks great, but there's a dustbin over there that ruins it a little bit, so I'm not going to bother taking the photograph. I've always been one of these photographers that encourages quality over quantity. Sometimes people will go to a location, spend an hour there and take hundreds of photographs, and I'll come back with 10 or 12. And yes, those 10 or 12 will hopefully be of a certain quality. They may not have the content that they could have had. Let me expand on that. I've recently returned from a trip to Hampshire in the south of England. Now, the purpose of the trip was just a holiday, to get away from it all for a bit and generally enjoy ourselves, rather than purposefully going to take photographs. Although because I'm a photographer, my camera was never far away. Because I had this idea in my head that I was taking too few photographs and potentially missing out on some things, I decided to approach this break with a new tack from a photographic point of view. I went to just take photographs that would spark memories. By changing my tack, I suddenly felt so much more freedom behind the camera. Instead of thinking, oh, my highlight's going to be blown out in the sky in this shot, or, oh, that bin is a bit distracting, but really does it detract from my memory that I'm trying to create so much? Because I was creating photographs for myself that, although I'm going to share them with you at the end of this video, weren't really meant for public consumption, I was started to make photographs that meant something to me and ultimately had more content to them, rather than always looking for that perfect composition and exposure. The more I pursued this refreshing new technique, the more experimental I found myself becoming, trying out new angles, new compositions, new techniques, even different subject matter to what I would usually choose to photograph. It took me back to the days when I first picked up a camera, uninfluenced by people telling me what was good and what was bad, and just taking photographs for me, being experimental. Yes, I may have come back with more photographs on my memory card and less space on my hard drive. I came back with photographs that weren't necessarily technically perfect, but in terms of content was so much richer. I won't look back at these pictures in years to come and think they're absolute world beaters that are going to win competitions and be featured on the front pages of Hampshire Life magazine. But what I will look back at them as is the memories that hopefully they will become over time. I think what we've got to remember is that the everyday person looking at our photographs is not going to look at the technical details. They're not going to think I would have used a different aperture or shutter speed to achieve a better result. What they're going to look at is the content of the photograph and whether it resonates with them. And if you've made a connection with it in the first place when you are making the photograph, then there's far much more chance that the people looking at your photograph are going to make some kind of connection with it as well. So instead of always going after this perfect scenario where we're using absolutely spot-on settings and absolutely spot-on composition techniques, sometimes by freeing ourselves to be ourselves behind the camera and not really thinking what's right or wrong, just going with our instincts, can produce really, really impressive results. What I'm not saying is that we should get rid of all quality in our photographs and just go with our instincts all the time. Obviously, if you are entering competitions with a view to winning them, or working as a photographer trying to hit specific briefs from clients that pay your bills, then quality is extremely important. If you're anything like me, you'll have this innate drive within you that tries to make every single photograph that you take perfect. And that isn't necessarily a detrimental thing, as long as we try and remember two very important points. Firstly, that I've covered in a previous video, perfection in life and therefore in photography doesn't actually exist. So we can strive for it, but as sad as it sounds, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're ever going to achieve it. But what it will do is breathe some technical quality into the photographs that we do make. But secondly, content of a photograph, i.e. the subject and maybe even the meaning behind the subject, is equally, if not more important than how we construct a photograph in the first place. Because when I was in Hampshire I was on holiday, I wasn't working towards a specific brief or planning a photo walk, or I didn't really have any intent on sharing my photographs wider than my family album. It allowed me to step back and approach my photography with more freedom. I wasn't necessarily worrying about the technical aspects. I was intent on trying to photograph memories that I could look back on in years to come to remind me of the wonderful time that I had whilst I was away. I must admit I've come back feeling really quite reinvigorated and truly believe that we can strike a balance. If we can afford ourselves the time every so often to just go out and take photographs for ourselves and leave those niggling voices in the back of our head that say you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that behind, we can then build in our technical knowledge of exposure and composition to create photographs that will resonate people, not only for their aesthetic quality, but also their content as well. It's about time that I shared with you some of the photographs that I took on my holiday in Hampshire. But before I do, please give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, because it helps me to disseminate this channel with other interesting budding photographers. And I'd love to hear your comments in the comments section below about the balance between quality and content of photographs. Also, if you'd like to learn about photography practically in unique and inspirational Yorkshire locations, then please check out our website yorkshirephotowalks.com for our latest photo walk schedule. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon.